I never thought my brother-in-law, Carl Chui, would dare to have designs on me. After drinking too much, his filthy nature was fully revealed. He stumbled closer.
People say dumplings are the tastiest food, and the most fun thing is, let's just try a little.
I panicked and immediately struggled to resist. I was a Taekwondo black belt, but my 9-month pregnant belly made it impossible for me to strike like before. I dodged while holding my stomach, trying to find a chance to call for help. Just at the most critical moment, the sound of the door opening rang out from outside. My parents-in-law had returned. "What are you doing?" Mother-in-law Peggy Zhang stood outside the slightly ajar door, shouting loudly, which made Carl Chui regain some of his senses and temporarily loosen his grip on me. I immediately retreated, widening the distance from the beast, adjusted my collar, and bent down to pick up my phone to call the police. Peggy Zhang realized my intention and immediately stepped forward to slap the phone out of my hand. The phone fell with a thud right at her feet. Before I could pick it up, she kicked it far away. "Mom, what are you doing?" "I'm calling the police." I shouted at her angrily. "Call the police for what? Aren't you afraid of losing face?" Peggy Zhang signaled my father-in-law, Daniel Chui, to drag Carl back to his room, while she closed the door and turned to comfort me. Carl was drunk. His mind was foggy, so he was just confused for a moment. As a sister-in-law, are you that narrow-minded? Are those words something a human being should say? You're so generous, aren't you? Do you call everyone Dad? Drunk for a moment? If you two had come back a few minutes later, I would have been humiliated by him. Seeing that I wouldn't yield or soften, Peggy Zhang immediately flipped her attitude. "Without evidence, don't speak so harshly. Humiliated or not, I suspect you seduced him. One hand can't clap, can it?" Slap. I slapped her right across the face. One of her cheeks immediately swelled up red. She held her face, staring at me as if she couldn't believe what had just happened. I tilted my head and looked straight into her eyes, my voice cold as ice. "I just want to ask you one question. Can one hand clap?" I shook my hand lightly. I hit a bit too hard, so it hurts a little. You. Peggy Zhang's eyes went wide, choked into silence. I took a deep breath to calm down and spoke every word slowly. "Besides, who says there's no evidence? I installed cameras in the house. Recently, there have been frequent thefts in the area, so I proactively installed security cameras in the room for safety. I didn't expect it to save my life in a situation like this." As soon as I finished speaking, I heard a bam. Daniel Chui, my father-in-law, rushed in from the door and smashed the wall-mounted camera with his hand. He didn't stop there. He bent down and stomped on the broken pieces several times, then rummaged through the debris to find the memory card. He stuffed it into his pocket and turned into the bathroom. Immediately after, the sound of the toilet flushing was heard. That was probably the final resting place of the memory card. My hands clenched into fists, hanging by my sides, my fingertips turning white from the force. The whole family was indeed cut from the same cloth. They echoed each other, snakes and rats colluding perfectly. I glanced over and saw Carl Chui standing at the door. He leaned against the door frame, hands in his pockets, casually watching the drama as if he were an audience member rather than the culprit. When he saw me looking, he even raised his eyebrows and smiled provocatively, smugness radiating from every line of his face. Drunk? Now he looked as sober as if he hadn't drunk a drop. I forced myself to calm down. At this moment, facing 3 people alone while pregnant was clearly not the time to be stubborn. My eyes darted to the wall clock. My husband, David Chui, was probably still on the plane and unreachable, and even if I could reach him, I couldn't expect much. I said nothing, turned around, and walked back to my room. Peggy Zhang was still clutching her cheek in anger, about to speak up to start more trouble, but Daniel Chui raised his hand to stop her.
"All right, it's nothing. Don't cause any more trouble."
His words were meant for Peggy Zhang, but clearly intended for me to hear. Damn it, that whole family was truly animals in human skin. Early the next morning, my best friend Hannah came to pick me up for a prenatal checkup. In the car, I told her everything that happened last night. Hearing this, Hannah was furious and started cursing loudly. I told you back then not to get married. We could have just checked into a nursing home together when we got old and lived a chill life, but you just had to rush blindly into love. Now look, what kind of trash did you marry? You couldn't find a more disgusting family even if you shone a flashlight across the entire city. Hannah was the type who never wanted to get married, only focused on getting rich, and now she was a genuine wealthy lady. She was never happy with my decision to marry in haste, and today she had even more reason to lecture me. I could only bow my head in silence and obediently listen to the scolding. She was right. I deserved to be scolded. Where is David Choi? Is he dead? Hannah asked again, her voice harsh this time. Mentioning this, I also found it very strange. Logically, David should have called me as soon as he got off the plane. Yet now it was past 9 a.m., his phone was silent, and he hadn't even read my messages. All the messages I sent were like stones dropped into the sea, with no response. Forget it, Hannah, just go to the checkup with me first. At the hospital, Hannah took care of everything. Getting the number, queuing, running back and forth, she was more dedicated than the baby's father. I intended to follow and help, but she pushed me firmly down onto the chair. It's very crowded right now, just sit still. If you let even a single hair on my goddaughter get hurt, I'll deal with you immediately. Ever since I secretly checked and found out it was a girl, Hannah had been calling her my goddaughter, my darling, all day long. She cared about everything even more than I, the biological mother, did. I rubbed my belly, smiled, nodded, and sat waiting, scrolling through my phone to pass the time. There was still no news from David, and an uneasy feeling began to rise in my heart. What on earth had happened to him? After the prenatal checkup, the two of us were preparing to go to a newly opened restaurant for lunch when a phone call suddenly disrupted our plans. Yes, I understand. I calmly hung up. Hannah was staring at the map on her phone to find the way. Seeing my expression was off, she asked, "What happened?" I looked straight into her eyes, my voice steady, my gaze as calm as water. "It's nothing big, just, my husband is dead." The person on the phone told me the hospital where David was being treated. I looked up at the sign in front of the gate. Wasn't this the exact hospital where I had my prenatal checkup? When we arrived in front of the emergency room, the Choi family hadn't arrived yet. Only a woman stood at the door, sobbing and muttering. "David, if you leave like this, how will our child and I survive?" I observed her closely. About 25 or 26 years old, not stunningly beautiful, but with delicate features that became more pleasant the longer you looked. Right now, her face drenched in tears would make people soft-hearted. No wonder David was infatuated. I glanced down at her belly. It was slightly protruding, probably 3 or 4 months along. How interesting. The woman felt my gaze and looked up. Not exactly surprised, just a bit evasive and awkward, pulling her shirt to cover her stomach. Hannah was sharp. She immediately understood everything and rushed forward, intending to slap her. I had to hurriedly stop her. "Hannah, don't be rash. Hitting a pregnant woman is immoral." She had just shrunk back in fear of being slapped, but upon hearing me, she straightened her back and even deliberately showed off her belly to prove her status as a pregnant woman. I smirked, rotated my wrist, and turned to Hannah. "If there's going to be hitting, let me do it. I'm pregnant too. But I don't have morals." The very next second, a slap landed on the left side of her face. Slap. She froze, her eyes dazed, petrified on the spot. Having a little beauty makes you arrogant? Stealing my husband leads to this result. She held her face and pointed at me, clearly not yet recovered. Before she could open her mouth, I gave her another one. This time the other side of her face also turned red, the handprint distinct like blush. "What are you doing? Do you even have to ask that question?" She is truly innocently stupid. "I am slapping you." "Why? Or was the force not enough for you to feel it? Shall I give you another one?" I was still raising my hand, preparing to unleash my Taekwondo black belt power, when the Choi family arrived just in time. Before seeing them, I heard Peggy Zhang scream from afar. "Son! Oh my son! Are you leaving your mother and father like this? And your unborn child too. Don't you need him anymore? You are so cruel, David." Hearing this, Hannah's blood immediately boiled, and she was about to explode in rage. I quickly held her hand, clearly feeling how hard her grip was. She had clenched her fists tight. "You damn old woman, what are you screaming about? David's wife and daughter are standing right here." Peggy Zhang's wide-open mouth paused for a second as she turned to look at me standing in the corner of the corridor. Perhaps she didn't expect me to arrive even earlier than them. Her eyes clearly shifted evasively, not daring to look straight at me for long. She immediately turned to the woman next to me, from whom she desperately needed an answer. "Molly, what happened to our David? Why is he gone?" Being named, Molly Chu officially started her performance, switching from sobbing to wailing miserably, wiping her tears as she recounted the story. I had to strain my ears to understand what had actually happened. It turned out that David hadn't been on a business trip these past few days. That was just an excuse fabricated to deceive me. He had been with her the whole time. Last night, he suddenly had vomiting and diarrhea. Thinking it was just food poisoning, he only took stomach medicine and went to sleep early. This morning, Molly called him repeatedly, but he wouldn't wake up. Panicked, she called for emergency help, but by the time he was taken to the hospital, David could no longer be saved. The doctor said the cause was acute ketoacidosis due to diabetes. David had diabetes, but had always controlled it well by injecting insulin. For all the years I was his wife, I always strictly managed his diet just because I feared a day like this. The result? He died in his mistress's bed. Life truly knows how to mock people cruelly. I reported it to the police. My husband died in a mistress's bed. This was more than enough for a thorough investigation. Unfortunately, all traces showed that David's death was just a combination of accidental factors. Just a few months ago, David had a traffic accident. He recklessly crossed the road at a red light and was hit by a motorcycle, leading to severe internal injuries. At that time, his pancreas was affected, making his diabetes worse. After the autopsy results were released, Peggy Zhang sighed in relief. She already knew about her son's affair and had even personally taken the mistress, Molly Chu, for an ultrasound to check the fetus's gender. Now reassured, confirming that her son's death had nothing to do with Molly Chu, she could happily await the birth of her grandson. Taking advantage of the time I was in the hospital giving birth, she blatantly brought Molly Chu home to care for her meticulously, a perfect nest occupation, turning my premarital property into hers with just a few simple steps. Hannah was indignant and took my house keys, intending to go over and demand an explanation. Unexpectedly, they were even more cunning. They had changed the locks long ago. But Hannah wasn't one to be easily bullied. She flew into a rage and caused a huge scene, splashing paint, throwing rotten eggs, and even hanging banners cursing them right below their apartment block. Yet, she underestimated the thickness of this family's skin. They just went in and out as if nothing had happened, living normally as if the whole world had nothing to do with them. At the postpartum care center, Hannah peeled an apple for me while nagging in frustration. That David Choi guy, just looking at his face, you could tell he was no good. Dead fish eyes, hooked nose, I don't understand how you fell for that type. Yeah, now that it's happened, I ask myself the exact same thing. When we first met, David was just a normal office worker, while I was the heir to my parents' assets and business, a wealthy young woman who didn't worry about money. His family had nothing, they couldn't afford a house or a wedding. But I never minded. I spent my own money to buy the house, and even deliberately told outsiders that he bought it to save face for him. After the wedding, I even proactively invited his parents and younger brother to live with us. Perhaps because I was an orphan from a young age, I craved a family home more than others. Less than 3 months into dating, David proposed. He promised to give me a family so I wouldn't be lonely anymore. Foolishly, I wore that ring, locking my life into a cage. After marriage, I gradually handed over the business to him, while I took care of the house and focused on preparing for pregnancy. At first, our household lived quite harmoniously. Peggy Zhang often cooked different dishes for me back then, which really warmed my heart. But that peace didn't last long. When I was 4 months pregnant, My in-laws urged me to check the fetus's gender. Knowing I was carrying a girl, the Choi family's attitude changed visibly. I was also diagnosed with premature ovarian failure. Getting pregnant was already a miracle, and the doctor said the chance of conceiving again was almost zero. The person who changed the fastest was Peggy Zhang. She started complaining and making insinuations every day. My son has such good genes. It's a pity he doesn't have a son to carry on the lineage. I cook and care for you every day, and in the end, I'm raising a daughter for someone else's family. What a waste of effort. My morning sickness made me unable to stand the smell of fish, yet she deliberately cooked fish every single meal. If I didn't eat, I was scolded for being picky. I once complained to David, but he always said his mom meant no harm, told me not to overthink it, and complained that his work was tiring, telling me not to cause more trouble. Was I causing trouble? I felt aggrieved, but didn't cause a scene, thinking if I endured a little, it would pass. But physiological reactions can't be suppressed, so I spent my own money to hire a maid to cook separately for me, temporarily resolving the conflict. In the 5th month of pregnancy, David had an accident and was hospitalized for half a month. After being discharged, he became busier and busier, rarely coming home. When asked, he just said he was working overtime. Only later did I find out that while hospitalized, he met Molly Chu, a widow who had recently lost her husband. As soon as he was discharged, the two stuck together like glue. Shamefully, at that time, Molly Chu's husband hadn't even passed the first 7 weeks of mourning. Thanks to David's efforts, Molly Chu soon became pregnant. When it was confirmed that the baby in her belly was a boy, he immediately bought her a house, calling it giving her a home. As for luxury goods and nourishing food, they flowed into that golden house like a river. I only needed a quick check of the company books to understand. The books were a mess, money was leaking uncontrollably, and the company had suffered losses beyond recovery. What was more infuriating was that the money he poured into Molly Chu, from brand-name goods to real estate, was my own premarital money. I had always kept money in his account for work convenience and emergencies. And the result? Not only did I not get a family, but even what was called home was secretly stolen by others. Funny, isn't it? The first half of my life was truly foolish beyond measure. Helen Chin. Hey, I'm talking to you. Hannah's voice pulled me out of my flashback. I smiled gently. All right, Hannah, just stay here and take care of me for the rest of this month. When the time comes, I'll invite you to watch a good show. Until I finished my confinement period, the Choi family didn't bother to show their faces even once. Their attitude towards this granddaughter was almost completely cold. But I didn't need that fake affection either. When registering the birth certificate, I gave the child my surname. As she grew day by day, looking at her chubby, adorable face, I felt my heart warm up again, as if something broken was slowly being healed. As soon as my confinement ended, Hannah acted like a domineering CEO, taking my daughter and me to her villa and even finding a nanny and wet nurse for me. I was a bit hesitant, afraid of bothering her. Hannah immediately put on a cold face. Fine, Helen Chin, are you being polite with me now? If you want to go ahead, but leave my daughter here. Hannah hugged the baby, cherishing her like a true treasure. Darling, when Godmother gets old, all my assets will be yours. You must be filial to Godmother, okay? Strictly speaking, be filial to your biological mother too. I rolled with laughter at her antics and stopped standing on ceremony, staying there with peace of mind. During this time, I wasn't idle either. I hired a private investigator and a lawyer to start investigating everything about David and Molly Chu thoroughly. After confirming enough necessary information, I officially launched my counterattack plan. In the house, the whole Choi family was eating dinner. The dining table was full of chicken, duck, fish, and meat, more savory dishes than vegetables. Molly Chu sat in what used to be my seat, with a bowl of bird's nest soup in front of her. The whole family was indeed harmonious and happy, beaming with joy. Boom! A loud, ear-piercing explosion rang out from the door without warning. Everyone turned their heads. The security door sprayed sparks, and a burning smell assaulted our noses. The group at the dining table jumped, turning in unison to look at the door, still holding their bowls, heads raised like a flock of bewildered geese. At that moment, I entered the stage. I walked in proudly through the door that had just been sawed open, followed by 2 tall, muscular bodyguards. "Are you crazy?" Peggy Zhang stood up abruptly, pointing at me and then at the scorched iron door, clearly silenced by the situation before her eyes. "Oh, that door?" I glanced in the direction she pointed, my voice nonchalant. "You people used it. It's dirty. I don't need it anymore." "What nonsense are you talking about? Barging into someone else's house is illegal. Destroying property can get you sent to jail." Molly Chu raised her voice to command Carl Chui. "Why aren't you chasing her out yet?" Carl Chui took the order and stepped forward.
Ex-sister-in-law, don't be too lovesick. I have a new sister-in-law now, but I don't have a wife yet. How about you become my wife?
Huh, wanting to be the good guy while taking everything. I wonder if he feels any remorse looking at his brother's portrait. A family like this couldn't salvage a single normal person. Seeing Carl reach out to touch me, I quickly twisted his arm back and kicked him straight in the waist. He took the full force of the blow, hurting so much he couldn't stand up. Disgusting pervert, he deserved it. I had been holding back this kick for months. If I hadn't been pregnant back then with my Taekwondo black belt, he would still be in the hospital now. Seeing her youngest son being beaten, Peggy Zhang couldn't take it anymore and lunged forward to claw at my face. I gave a cold laugh. "Old, but still eager to fight? If you plan to strike, it's perfect timing. I've been wanting to deal with you." With a glance, I grabbed a bowl of soup from the table and dumped it straight onto her head. Oh, it was her favorite dish too, stinky fish soup. How thoughtful of me. You bitch." Peggy Zhang clutched her face, howling as if she were being skinned. The soup was still hot, her face turned red in patches, and there were even a few water blisters forming. You jinx. You killed my son, and now you want to harm my youngest too? I'll fight you to the death today." She struggled, rushing forward, really wanting to fight to the death. I raised my hand and slowly pulled a file out of my bag, holding it up in front of her. "Stand back, old woman. Look at this before you scream." Peggy Zhang skeptically took it. On the cover were prominent words, "Psychiatric Diagnosis Report." She froze on the spot. My father had arranged this for me through connections before he passed away, acting as a final protective talisman he left behind. Dad said, "Daughter, if anyone bullies you in the future, don't be afraid of anything, just fight. I've prepared a way out for you." Dad said I was the treasure in the palm of his hand. He didn't want me to suffer any hurt. It's just that I had disappointed him, hadn't I? But from today on, I will definitely protect myself, just like when Dad was still here. I made up my mind. While Peggy Zhang was still stunned, I turned into the kitchen and chose a fruit knife that looked just right. I toyed with the knife while casually leaning against the kitchen door. Finished looking? If so, continue. I've already thought about where to cut first. After all, a mentally ill person killing someone isn't a crime. But don't worry, for the sake of us once calling each other mother and daughter, I'll go easy on you. I smirked. I'm very fast, just try to endure a little. You're lying. It must be fake, you forged that paper. Peggy Zhang screamed, refusing to believe it. If you can't read, I'll call a dog to read it for you. I was originally mentally ill, then recovered, but now I've relapsed. Your son was so filthy he made me sick again, and adding postpartum depression, I've really relapsed. I clapped my hands and laughed radiantly. Surprised? Isn't it fun? I rolled my eyes around. Except for Carl, who was about to faint, the other 3 didn't dare to look straight at me even once, especially Molly Chu, who held her belly tight, her eyes watching me warily. I laughed coldly inside. Don't worry, I will definitely let you give birth to the child completely, so we can settle the score together. As I was speaking, the police arrived. As soon as Peggy Zhang saw the police, her eyes lit up like she had caught a lifeline. "Officer, arrest this woman quickly. Not only did she hit my son, but she also claimed to be mentally ill and threatened to kill me." I quickly stepped forward and handed the psychiatric report to the police.
It has a doctor's signature and a full stamp. It doesn't look fake. I need to take it back for verification. Also, she said you hit her son. What is that about?
The police officer looked at me and asked. I calmly took out my phone and played the video of Carl Chui making a move on me. Officer, I want to report this person for sexually harassing me. Peggy Zhang and her husband heard me mention the video and exchanged glances, their eyes clearly writing the words, impossible.
How is that possible? I flushed that memory card. Where did the video come from?
As soon as Daniel Chui spoke, he realized he had slipped up. Seeing the police focusing on the video and ignoring him, he breathed a sigh of relief. Human evolution has come this far. Where were you hiding back then? Do you know what cloud storage is? Senile old man. Compared to Peggy Zhang, this old man shut up immediately after I provoked him. He wasn't interesting at all. After watching the video, the police immediately requested to take Carl Chui to the station for further investigation. In the video, I was 9 months pregnant, trying desperately to resist him. The scene was no different from an animal act, touching the very limits of humanity. Peggy Zhang panicked and tried to rush out to stop the police, but I pulled her back. Don't be in a rush, old woman. Your turn is coming. I turned to the police. Officer, I have another matter. These people are occupying my house. I request that they be evicted and demand compensation for all damages during this time. Having said that, I presented the house deeds and camera footage from the front door from the time I gave birth until now. Peggy Zhang screamed in anger. You evil woman. You are so heartless. My son just died, and you want to kick us out? Molly is heavily pregnant. Do you plan to let your husband's only son wander the streets? Although the police had seen many things, hearing this confused them. I enthusiastically explained to them. Over there, that woman. I pointed at Molly Chu. She lowered her head, not daring to look at me. She is my husband's mistress, and my husband died in her bed. Probably due to professional investigative instinct, the look in the police officers' eyes as they viewed this group immediately changed. After explaining this side, I turned to confront Peggy Zhang. Hey, Peggy Zhang, does that head grow on your neck just to make you taller than others? I said it's my premarital property. Why should I let you stay? Get out of my house. Peggy Zhang put her hands on her hips, the typical style of a shrew. Even if the red book is in your name, you married my son. You are a person of the Chui family, so the house is ours too. Furthermore, you have an obligation to support us in our old age. Pfft. A dirty eel gets a little seawater and thinks it's become seafood? David is dead, but Carl is still here. Even if Carl dies too, don't expect me to support you. By law, a daughter-in-law has no obligation to support her mother-in-law. Got it? If you're free, study the law, you outdated old thing. TSK, if I had known this earlier, I would have called the police a bit later. I intended to strike to vent my anger, but who knew that with witnesses now, I can only reason and refrain from hitting? It's frustrating. After I spoke, Peggy Zhang looked at the police in disbelief, pleading for help. The police nodded in confirmation. She froze, tongue-tied. The atmosphere was as tense as a violin string when suddenly Molly Chu, who had been silent all this time, spoke up. Mom, maybe we should move out. Carl bought me a house before. We can go live there. Oh, calling her mom already? Couldn't be the daughter-in-law, so now competing for the widow's seat? That's some thick skin. Peggy Zhang was unwilling, but wary of the police standing there and afraid that I, the certified mentally ill person, would do something reckless, so she reluctantly nodded in agreement. The police drove Carl, who was in so much pain he almost fainted, to the station. Peggy Zhang glared at me, her eyes vicious, as if she wanted to eat me alive. You jinx. You can't give birth to a son. It serves you right. I didn't bother to care, treating it as if she were farting. I enthusiastically pointed to the door, telling the 2 tall bodyguards to help her carry the luggage and throw it straight into the trash can. Finally, I waved goodbye. It's getting cold. Remember to pile more dirt on yourselves so your bellies don't get cold. I returned to the villa and told Hannah the whole story of what had just happened. I thought she would applaud and praise me, but unexpectedly, her eyes went wide. So you just let them go that easily? What about the assets David left behind? According to the law, Those two old people and the child in the mistress's belly have inheritance rights. You and your daughter only get 2/5. Things that rightfully belong to you now have to be shared with that scum. Don't you find it unfair? You should have just slashed them all. You have an immunity card in your hand anyway. Hearing her speak increasingly violently, I panicked and quickly covered my child's ears. Children shouldn't hear such words. Hannah also realized she had misspoken and immediately gave a forced grin. Be good, darling. Godmother was just joking. In the future, you must be a model citizen and strictly obey the law. Seeing Hannah's serious demeanor, I couldn't help but laugh. But actually, she was worrying too much. How could I easily let others take what belonged to me? I was just waiting for the right moment. After marrying David, it's true I transferred the legal entity of the company to his name. Back then, I trusted him absolutely and didn't think about holding shares. Later, we bought 6 houses and 2 cars together, and he used my premarital savings under the guise of revolving company capital to spend without restraint. Now that David is dead, by law, his wife, children, and parents all have inheritance rights. Perhaps that's why Molly Chu clung to that family and refused to let go. Roughly calculating, there were about 3 months left before she gave birth. During these 3 months, while staying with my daughter, I secretly found someone to reevaluate all the company's assets. After all, my father built that company, so I had run it myself for many years. Many things were conveniently within my grasp. Hannah, who doesn't make mistakes in judgment in life? Besides, thanks to that mistake, I have this lovely goddaughter. Indeed, at the mention of the goddaughter, Hannah fell silent immediately, acting just like a doting mother. I'm telling you. Who says my assets have to be shared with them? Since we're free, come with me to the lawyer's office. When everything was in place, the Chui family also announced that Molly Chu had given birth to a chubby boy weighing 3.8 kilograms. Peggy Zhang, needless to say, smiled until she almost fainted from joy. Calculating the time, it was my turn to take the stage. I dragged Hannah along, and Hannah called 2 high-spirited bodyguards to march to Molly Chu's house. When the electric saw tore open the door once again, the 2 old CUIs and Molly Chu were in the living room cooing over the baby. Sparks flew, and I appeared again like a shining star. This time, Molly Chu couldn't maintain her composure like the last time. Helen Chin. You again? Are you crazy? I dusted myself off, my voice as casual as if I were sitting in a flower garden. That's right, I'm a mental patient. I told you last time. Didn't you hear clearly? It's okay, I can carve that sentence onto your tombstone so it's easy to remember. Peggy Zhang was furious, while her husband quietly carried the baby into the bedroom. You vile woman. Why do you haunt my family like a ghost? Last time you sawed the door claiming the house was yours, and I tolerated it. But what about this time? The red book for this house is clearly in the name of my obedient daughter-in-law, Molly Chu. Oh, obedient daughter-in-law? I glanced at her and then at Molly Chu, mocking coldly. But I clearly remember that David hadn't divorced me even until death. Could it be that after he died, Miss Chu here had a ghost marriage? Behind me, Hannah burst out laughing. Helen, are you stupid? A ghost marriage requires 2 dead people. She rolled her eyes toward Molly Chu, whose face had turned pale, and continued. But looking at Ms. Chu's face being so pale, who knows, maybe she really is a ghost. Molly Chu couldn't retort. She took a few deep breaths and bowed her head to call the police. I had nothing to fear. I pulled Hannah to sit on the sofa, leisurely enjoying the fruit plate on the table. I had to admit, these people really knew how to enjoy life. The cherries were the fancy 500g kind. Hannah and I ate our fill and even shared with the 2 bodyguards. The 4 of us were happy as if on a picnic. In no time, the whole fruit tray was clean. Peggy Zhang tried to rush out to stop us, but looking at me and the 2 muscular bodyguards, her face turned red as a pig's liver, and finally, she had to swallow her anger. Just as we finished eating, the police arrived. Before Molly Chu could open her mouth, I quickly stepped forward. Officer, I want to file a report. This woman is my husband's mistress. My husband bought this house with my money, and now I demand she return it. Hearing that, Peggy Zhang stood frozen. With her level of cognitive ability, those sentences probably fried her brain. Fortunately, Molly Chu was a bit more educated. She panicked for a few seconds, then calmed down, carrying the baby out from the room to show off to the police. "Officer, this is David Chui's son. A child always has inheritance rights, right?" "Yes, yes, yes. That's right." I also stepped forward, looked closely at the boy, and shook my head. "Oh, this boy has a high nose and a bright face. He looks even more handsome than David. I don't believe he's his son."
Then let's invite David Chui to the station for a DNA test.
"My husband?" I replied warmly. "He's dead, burned to ashes. He died right in her bed." I pointed at Molly Chu. The police officer's expression became a bit subtle.
Then confirming paternity will be very difficult.
Peggy Zhang's expression also changed visibly. Hannah, beside me, enthusiastically offered a plan. "Then just do a test between the grandfather and the grandson, right?" Hearing this, Peggy Zhang's eyes lit up, while Molly Chu's face beside her turned gray like someone with chronic constipation. "Hannah, you're young. You don't understand how messy these old people can be." I spoke while calmly taking a test result sheet out of my bag. "Carl Chui? He's not Daniel's biological son." I glanced at Daniel Chui. "As for David? I'm also very suspicious." Hearing this, Daniel Chui jolted as if electrocuted and rushed over to snatch the paper from my hand. I didn't do anything. Of course, I offered it with both hands for him to tear. After that, the whole house was as chaotic as a flea market. Peggy Zhang and Daniel Chui rushed at each other, clawing and cursing incessantly. The baby was scared into wailing. Molly Chu hugged her child and huddled in a safe corner, her face naturally relaxing. Two people nearing 70 were fighting. The police stood there not knowing whether to intervene or not. Seeing the situation was fun enough, I pulled Hannah out. Walking a distance away, we could still clearly hear Peggy Zhang screaming behind us. "You old man." "Carl was because I was confused and made a mistake, but David is your biological son. He really is your son." "Huh, now no one can prove it anymore. Whoever believes it can believe it." David's adulterous blood was probably inherited from his mother. "See, exactly like her." "Helen, you're amazing." Hannah couldn't stop praising me. "But if you had opened your eyes earlier, you wouldn't have gotten stuck with this pile of trash. Now half of the assets that should have been yours have been snatched by them." Seeing that she was still bothered by my marriage, I could only smile. After some maneuvering, the figures on the company books were now showing a loss of nearly 20 million. David didn't have a dime of premarital assets. All assets in his name were common marital property, consisting of a company with 20 million in debt, 6 houses, and 2 cars. The portion of assets he left behind included half of the company, 3 houses, and 1 car. This meant David's parents, Peggy Zhang and Daniel Chui, could share 1/4 of the company, along with 1.5 houses and 0.5 cars. The total value was approximately 3 million. By law, children are not obligated to pay debts for their fathers, but if these 2 old people wanted the houses and car, they had to accept the 1/4 debt of the company. Calculating it, taking that share would mean losing nearly another 2 million. When the court announced the verdict, Peggy Zhang was so angry she slapped her thighs and screamed in court that I colluded with the judge to split the money, getting herself detained on the spot for 15 days for disrupting order. As for the house and luxury goods David bought for Molly Chu, they were all paid for from my personal bank card containing premarital funds. Thanks to his deceased status, I recovered everything as easily as turning over my hand. After Peggy Zhang was released, she planned to take Molly Chu and her son back to the old house in the countryside to care for them, but Daniel Chui refused, claiming the child had nothing to do with him, and kicked them out. With no other choice, she had to rent a house to live with Molly Chu and her son. As time passed, Molly Chu's true colors were revealed. She ordered Peggy Zhang around like a maid all day. Because of her grandson, she gritted her teeth and endured. Taking my daughter out to play, I often saw her from a distance collecting scraps, but she still looked spirited, probably clinging to hope because of the grandson. And what I hated most was seeing her happy. That day, I deliberately stood waiting where she often passed by. Seeing me, her eyes were full of disdain, but she no longer had the courage to cause trouble. Just as she was about to dodge in another direction, I called her back. "Hey, old woman. Remember David's car accident?" "I remember. Why ask that? What trick are you playing now?" Peggy Zhang looked at me warily. "Oh, it's nothing. I just forgot to tell you." At that time, his lower body was injured, and he was no longer capable of having children. Here, a gift for you. The medical report from back then. At the time of the accident, I knew David desperately wanted a son. I was afraid he would be severely shocked if he knew this right after the accident, so I hid it and didn't tell anyone. Who would have thought things would turn out so ridiculously later? "I don't believe it. This is fake. You made it up." Peggy Zhang snatched the paper, tearing it to shreds before even looking at it, and rushed at me like a madwoman. I dodged to the side and nimbly responded with a kick. She fell flat on the ground, panting heavily. "If you don't believe me, go to the hospital and ask. The records are still there. Also, I have one more piece of good news for you." I excitedly bent down and spoke slowly. "The police contacted me earlier, saying that your youngest son, Carl, was permanently damaged by my kick. Don't dream of having a grandson in this lifetime." After saying that, I stood up, dusted off my bottom, and walked away, ignoring her wailing and cursing behind me. Not listening, not listening. The soft-shelled turtle is chanting scriptures. Later, I heard that as soon as Peggy Zhang got home, she had a huge fight with Molly Chu. The two fought until their hair was almost torn out. In the end, Peggy Zhang had the upper hand. She kicked Molly Chu and her son straight out of the house, not allowing them to take a single item. Molly Chu, alone with her child and nowhere to live, was rumored to have sent the boy to an orphanage while she ran away. The next time I saw her was just like the first time, still at the hospital, still with a big belly, but this time she was being surrounded, beaten, and scolded by people. Hannah went with me for a health checkup, stopped by to watch the drama for a bit, and came back looking excited. That girl went back to being a mistress and was caught by the first wife climbing into her husband's bed. Her nature really is hard to change. Hannah continued to follow her story like watching a soap opera. Rumor had it that this time Molly Chu couldn't keep the baby and even had her uterus removed. I was stunned hearing that and gave a thumbs up. The first wife is truly mighty. Peggy Zhang also once came to my house, kneeling outside the door crying and kowtowing, saying she wanted to see David's biological child once. Hannah opened the door, saw it was her, and immediately grabbed a broom to chase her away like chasing evil spirits. Hearing the noise, I ran out. Hannah thought I was softening and stomped her foot in anger. "Helen!" Hearing my voice, a joyful smile suddenly blossomed on Peggy Zhang's wrinkled face. "What biological grandchild? If you keep talking nonsense, I'll have a relapse. Do you believe me?" The smile on her face froze. "This is my child, mine alone. The name on the birth certificate only lists me as the mother. Her surname is Chin, and she has absolutely nothing to do with your Chui family." Hannah, hearing this from behind, laughed heartily and spoke while laughing. I knew Helen didn't have that kind of kindness. Her kindness was eaten up by the Chui family long ago. Peggy Zhang was provoked until her eyes rolled back, and she fainted on the spot. We were still kind enough to call an ambulance for her, though I didn't know if she had enough money to pay the hospital fees. But that wasn't my concern anymore. Later, my daughter, Hannah, and I just lived a happy and fulfilling life.